Old business, we're done. New business, we have the review of the annual appointments.
All the same, I left a new copy. We had a couple revisions since the
Ah.
I sent out on Thursday night.
Yep, all right.
The new copy in front of you is.
So I'll use the new copy instead of the old copy. Okay, good, thank you, thank you.
That was nicely done, the way you shadowed the ones out that we didn't have to pay attention to. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Were there many changes, Chris? Is it easy to highlight those so that?
Nope, there was some minor changes to the Medfield Emergency Management Group.
Yep.
And we just got confirmation from the rail trail about their committee, so.
That was, I had the rail trail circled. I think it was a Ted Pitcock that wanted to be on that. Did you pick that up?
It didn't come from the chairman. Evelyn had contacted all the chairmen and gotten their feedback, and that was not on his list.
Okay, let me follow up
So
on that.
I want to follow up on that.
In fact, I think he met with Christian and Mike Sullivan.
Okay.
on some different ideas. And we need to do something with the downtown study committee. We haven't met in almost 2 years. We need to readdress what the goals are. If any of the existing members want to continue to serve, are there new members, that want to be on that? What's the direction? Because right now I don't believe the downtown study committee has met. But I think we need to just figure where we're going with that.
I agree. I think it needs to get reinvigorated and re-energized. And I think we've kind of been asking them to sit on the sidelines for a while, and we should stop doing that.
And then, do we still have the State Hospital Mediation Committee?
Yes.
That stays in
continues.
existence? Okay. I think that was the 2 questions I had. Mark, any comments on that?
No.
Pete, did you have any other?
No.
And are there any committee chairs we have not heard back from?
Yes, solid waste, they said not until they meet in September would they
Okay.
have a good idea. Have not heard from Mass Historic or Historic District.
Okay.
They didn't respond.
Well, I know, I know that Barbara Jacobs has either moved or is out of town. So I know they have a vacancy, and that's very specific as to who's on that committee. According to that setup, it has to be someone who lives in the district, it has to be someone who's a realtor. There's a set number. So I know they're looking for a replacement for Barbara Jacobs.
How does that work when you have several districts? Is there a separate committee for each district?
No,
or-
I think it's one that oversees, though, but is each town do its own? Do they have the ability to set up its own criteria, or is that under state?
Statutory.
That is, okay. So it's very specific as to who serves on that.
But if they have
It depends, there can be multiple districts with separate committees. I don't know how, I really haven't paid any attention to what was done. I
They're
think it's
under the
all one.
It is.
So in
But it
terms-
is specified in the statute.
Just in terms of historic district, we don't have an official resignation from Barbara Jacobs yet.
Okay, so you need
I
one.
think we would need an official
Okay.
resignation.
I just noticed that came in an email, so they need a resignation. What do we do, downtown study committee? How do we, what's the best way to?
I would put a hold on reappointing them tonight. Let's talk to Matt McCormick and see if he wants to get them together, and then
Okay.
see if there are other interested parties that are willing to serve. But I know that Matt is still interested in serving on it.
I know Nancy Kelly Lavin, of course, served because when she was with Lords, when the center. So I'm not sure how many. I don't think there's a lot, but I think there's a few Medfield residents who are business people in the downtown that maybe we could reach out to see if they'd be willing, because they have the biggest stake. They're in the downtown. Okay. Pete, anything else on that?
No.
Selectmen reports. Mark.
Just to remind everyone, it's been a pretty good summer for Thursday nights. Zulu Gallery, right? Got to be over there. And it's been we've had a pretty good run. It was a little rainy last Thursday, but just remind everyone that the fun continues for the summer in thrilling downtown Medfield.
I noticed Noon Hill Grill now has live music also
Thursday nights, yeah. And they've had that through the winter
Yeah.
time too, yeah. So
It's
that's
a happening
things
night.
things are hopping.
Maybe Pete was right, we will become a destination place.
That's right.
And Pete?
Just mention to people that I've got my office hours this Friday, 9 to 10 at the center. You can just drop in, no appointments necessary. And the other thing I'll mention is that Beginning Years, apparently for 22 years, has been running a lemonade stand, and they're doing it currently this week. It runs from 10:30 to 11:30, and it runs through August 7. And they're fundraising, the money that they raise goes to something for the Higgins team, which is part of the Jimmy Fund, which is, apparently they have some relationship to that. So it's a nice event.
I just had a couple of things. We have Sheriff Bellatti's cleanup crew coming this week, correct?
I think they postponed
Postponed it
until
on that.
September, yeah.
Well, I actually had asked to be postponed because it didn't, as I walked, I looked at the areas that really need to be cleaned up, Hartford Street, the Causeway, and the brush on the side, because of the summertime, it would take them a day to find the trash because of the grass.
And we might lose the prisoner.
You might lose that, yeah. Whereas if they could come late fall or late spring,
Early
before
spring.
the vegetation
yeah.
comes in, then you can see all
Yeah.
the litter that's there. Because as I walked down the causeway, I said, I can't see, I know it's full of litter, but because of the vegetation.
In the early spring, before things start growing, you
Yeah.
can really see the stuff then.
But Ken mentioned he thought they could maybe help at the landfill and some other locations, so I'm not quite sure where that is, but they are available. I know they would come out. I continue to be concerned with the situation of the Beaver Dam and the flooding on Hartford Street. I just see in Easton, we just picked up another case of the triple E on one of the mosquitoes, and that stagnant water just sits there. I know we have the trustees coming in at the end of September, right on our calendar,
September 15th.
September 15th, and we'll have our planning board, our Board of Health there as well. I just have some real concerns. I know also there's a major dam downstream, and I know there's some concern if something happened to that dam and all that water goes racing
Sure.
down. Now you're talking some serious damage downstream as well. So that just is a concern. I also talked to the chief of police about, now that the police station is up on West Street, I've got some feedback from citizens just concerned the lack of seeing the police in the downtown area. And the chief said that he's going to start a program called Park, Lock, and Patrol. And what that is, the officer parks the cruiser, locks it, and for 15 to 30 minutes a day, walks around a different part of the downtown, and then proceeds to go on. So I thought that was excellent.
Very good.
And it gets, gets the townspeople to see the officer in the downtown area. He's walking around, gets to see some of the business people. He sees what the traffic situation is and can firsthand report back that he's actually walking around. So I thought that was real good.
Good.
And I think that's it. Two other things. One I'm concerned about on the information, and I'm just reading about it now. Medfield Commons on 270 Main Street was cited by the ABCC for selling alcohol to a
Bagged.
person under 21. It seems to me we've had some issues with the way the alcohol was set up inside the store. And the signage on that. I'm just concerned, I'm not sure what recourse we, as a board, we have if this is gonna be a problem.
Well, the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission has its own enforcement agents, and they go around to various communities. They have overlapping authority with the local licensing authority. And this is the second time within the last few years that they've gotten an establishment.
Yeah.
It's not this one, but they had previously gotten another one here for underage. And and I don't think they run stings or so-called compliance checks. I think they actually basically observe and intercept an actual underage sale. 'cause
Oh, doing that, yeah.
They take dim view of so-called compliance checks. But the actual violations, they have no hesitancy with
Sure.
imposing a sanction, harsh sanction against the licensee. So And unfortunately, though, they don't coordinate with you. They come in and do what they want to do when they
Sure.
want to do it. Bigger towns with, you know, more dedicated police people or grant money, they actually will enforce regular compliance checks, a lot of the other big towns do. On the other hand, we just got through enforcement against a local liquor store that was selling to minors, where an off-duty police officer happened to be in the store and observed what he thought was going to be a sale to underage, called for backup, and sure enough, it was. And so we enforce it, and that goes up to the ABCC.
Mark, are you referring to that happening in Medfield or in
No,
Franklin?
that was a Franklin issue, so.
So do we have any recourse if this becomes a problem, an issue?
They will probably be disciplined by the ABCC in some way, shape, or form.
And we have to
on
renew
this-
their license every year?
Yeah, license renewal is basically viewed as a ministerial act. If you're having a problem with a licensee, they need to be dealt with separately with notice and hearing separately from the annual license renewals. As far as the ABCC is concerned, that's just basically an automatic rubber stamping process.
So if we have some kind of an issue with that, when
Right.
the time comes for the license, we would have to have a special hearing?
Before then,
Deal
it
with
doesn't have to wait for the license. It can come at any time that you become aware that there's an issue going on. Now, at the time that they got their license, we imposed some very specific conditions as to what part of the store
Yep, remember
uh,
that, yep,
would be available for that
yeah,
sale.
yeah.
I remember drafting them 3 different ways so that there would be no misunderstanding. So if, for example, somebody went in and observed that they were selling outside that area, that would be a violation.
Yep.
And then just one other thing, we have a letter here from a former resident concerned about the condition of the former Clark Tavern, so-called. Do you know where we are with that? Does that,
The parties move for what's called legally summary judgment, which is an expedited process where you basically say to the court, there's no dispute as to facts, I'm entitled to judgment as a matter of law. The other party did the same thing, no, I'm entitled to judgment as a matter of law. So they briefed the issue, there was oral argument, the judge has it under advisement. To be perfectly honest, from what I've seen, I don't expect that the case is going to be disposed of on summary judgment. So then it's going to have to get scheduled for a trial. So we're months and months from a resolution. If anyone wanted to reach out, just strictly speaking as the town council, I would not be opposed to the town reaching out to the owner applicant and parties of interest to see if there's some way that the project or a project can proceed that everybody can live with, that's in the town's interest and that meets everybody's concerns. I think you probably would need some kind of impartial mediator to sit down, because I think there's been too much attorney advocacy up until this point.
how do you go about doing that?
You just invite them, basically, and then you set ground rules that, you know, nobody, whatever's said is not gonna be used by one party against the other, and then you proceed, just like you would basically, as Pete, in a mediation, basically.
Who would do that, you?
Anybody could do it. I mean, you know,
Well, you said you wouldn't be adverse to doing it.
no, I'm
so
not,
I'd presume you
you know,
would.
if the town were to do it, if you know, Richard wanted to do it, or set up some mechanism with town involvement to do it, because obviously it is a historic asset that is deteriorating as it sits there. And even if it weren't, the property looks like hell, it's right on the main street. So on a number of levels, there is an overriding public interest in some kind of a resolution there.
Well, if the board wants, and unless somebody wants to, I'll follow up with maybe Mark and Michael on
And
that.
explore that a little bit, sure.
And I mean, maybe if you tell me to, I would reach out to the attorneys for the parties and invite them to.
I would actually be willing to do that too.
I'll give it to you then.
I guess the one benefit that it might have, Richard, if I were to do it, is that I'm used to doing mediations.
I
in
would yield
arbitrations,
to
and,
you on that.
But I'd be very happy to offer my services to them as a mediator.
Together and try to work out something, arrange
So they want me to reach out to the attorneys and indicate that the Board of Selectmen has an interest in seeing if the parties can reach common ground.
If you'd be willing to do that, that's great.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks.
Worst anybody says is no, and then you go from there.
Okay, any other business that come before the board, Mike?
I just have one thing. I just
Sure.
want to go back for a second to the elected and appointed officials.
Yes.
Are
Do we have to take a vote?
appointing them, or do you want to?
Oh, details.
Oh, you have to bring up the
Well,
fine points,
I
don't
think
you?
I think there were just a couple that we wanted to hold on.
I think you want to hold on downtown study committee.
Yeah,
Downtown study, we had a question on
Historic
the
district,
Bay
yeah.
Colony
Historic.
Rail Trail,
Yeah.
that there might be another member on that.
in
Well, I
this.
would appoint them as they are, and then
Yes.
Oh, and
let's
they
talk to
can add-
Tricia and
okay.
Right,
and
exactly.
add to it.
That's fine.
And.
And wouldn't we do that with downtown
Historic
study then
district.
too?
And same thing,
Well, the Historic District,
appoint-
we're waiting for a resignation on that, but that can come normal, correct?
Right, yeah, and just appoint the ones that
Yeah.
are up for renewal, yeah?
So I would think that we could appoint downtown study as well, pending whatever changes we make later.
Sure.
And so I would move that we appoint everybody on the list that's up for appointment.
Second?
That's second, it's fine with me.
Questions, debate? All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Aye.
Good.
Thank you, Kristen. Mike, anything else?
Yeah, just a couple of things I wanted to brief you on. The school department opened the bids for the boiler, the
Mhm.
551,000 that was appropriated at town meeting to
Yeah.
replace the boilers that we let school. They opened the bids a couple of weeks ago. They came in high. Primarily, it was high because of the rental of the boiler, because the way the school building assistants set up the time schedule, they were gonna have to do the installation in the fall. So, they have written for permission to, rebid it. And it would put the construction in the spring or summer. So it would make much more sense that if you're gonna replace a boiler, you do it when the boiler isn't needed, rather
Exactly,
than having to rent a boiler, so.
sure.
But they have to get approval from the School Building Assistance Bureau on that, or authority. Andrew tells me he's got someone to replace the treads on the steps out back, and that should be done in the
Great.
next couple of weeks.
Great.
They're gonna start work on the HVAC, the money that was appropriated in the capital budget, that should be starting next week. We had a meeting this morning. You had asked Mark and the chief and myself to get together to review the speed bumps and dips and signs and regulations, crosswalks, and we had a traffic calming measures, I guess is the new terminology for it. So we had an extensive meeting, and there were several issues that came up that we want to explore further. Mark pointed out the issue of liability. Would there be any additional liability from the installation of some of these devices? He contacted our insurance company, and they are looking into that. Ken and Bobby Kennedy and Eddie Hinckley were here as well for that. So we talked about the issue of snow plowing and street sweeping, and how they might be impacted by speed humps, is it, how you call them, humps?
Well, Westwood calls them speed humps, yeah.
Humps, okay. So they're going to try to get some more information on that. The chief has been looking at studies from across the country on the impact of these. He also wants to look into, some of the studies indicate that the speed limit is those signs that you see along the road, the speed limit is 30 miles an hour. You are currently traveling at 40 miles an hour, that sort of thing. They seem to prove more effective than the speed bumps. There's also the issue of noise with the bumps. When you get cars or trailers or something, trucks going over it, they can be quite noisy.
Yep.
The issue came up also, as you mentioned, and we discussed this morning about rear-end collisions. If somebody is approaching a bump and slows down and the car behind them doesn't because they don't see the bump, could there be rear-end collisions? So we're having a meeting in 2 weeks to see if we can get answers to some of these questions, but there were a lot of questions that were raised. And we're also gonna talk to Westwood. I guess Westwood has put it in and get their take on it. I think they've been in about a year, so they have had some experience with it. But it was an interesting meeting because a lot of things came out that we hadn't really thought about when you first considered it.
The other significant point was that the emergency personnel are opposed to them because it slows down our response times and transporting
ambulance.
times
Ooh.
because
For the
it's
Someone's in the
ambulance, yeah.
slow,
ambulance.
both going and once they're transporting, so
If they have someone
they're
in it.
not crazy about them either.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
And one of the final things was,
Hmm.
how do you determine where they should go? Because once you put one in, we anticipate you get a lot of requests. Everybody wants one on their streets, but probably they don't want them on the streets that they have to drive on once they get off their street. So you have to have some criteria for if you are going to do something, how you do it so you don't get stuck. And well, you put one on his street, I want one on my street. That sort of
What's the criteria?
system.
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
The major one that the police chief indicated was discouraging cut-throughs where you don't want them, and the example that came up was right out here, James Avenue, where
Yeah,
we're all familiar with people traveling,
yeah.
intending to go up North Street, just shooting up there, and then when they get to North Street, they tend to shoot out in there as well.
Yes.
And so he was not opposed, if this were going to be done on a experimental basis, of putting one on James Avenue, for instance, right around the corner,
Yeah.
which would act as a calming influence and hopefully to discourage people from doing that because they lose some of the incentive that they otherwise have to do it now.
Are you talking about me?
I don't know, do you do it?
I think we all have at one point or another.
Well, I
There's
think-
one thing to doing it, but some of the ones that I see do it, they're just
I know, yeah.
driving irresponsibly,
Yes.
so.
Well, it'd be interesting too to see, because Westwood went through the winter with that, how they deal with the issue of snow plows, and I didn't even think of the street sweepers, so how they do with that too.
Yeah, we
Now,
didn't really
Bobby
think of that
Kennedy
until-
raised
yeah,
the issue
yeah.
of drainage too. They tend to
Very careful.
affect
Of
drainage,
course.
they divert it, and they also, the water tends to get in. If it's laid down as a separate section, the water tends to get underneath and buckle them. So there are all kinds of issues from a
Yeah.
maintenance standpoint.
Be interesting
Yeah.
what some of the towns do.
Yeah, you also have to put signage. Did you notice Westport, that you have to
This
have
was-
Yeah, all
signs?
kinds
Yeah, they
of
have signs all over
Where
the
they
place.
are.
Oh,
Right,
yeah,
they
it
are.
says speed hump, it says slow
Coming
to
up,
20
and
miles
then
an hour.
there's two for each one.
The signs all over the place.
All over the
Yeah,
place.
yeah,
Yeah.
which can be kind of a.
While we're on roads, Mike, anything more on the Harding Farm Street Railroad tracks?
We don't, we've been
Waiting for
working
them.
on it, we'll
Okay.
keep going on that, but, we also met this morning with the developer of the building next door, the former
Woods Block.
Master's Touch or Will's Hardware,
Will's
depending on
Hardware.
when you move to town.
That's right.
And
Roads block.
Yeah, okay.
Ward's Block,
Oh,
yes.
that's what the official name is.
Yes. And I think we have reached some recommendations that we would give to the board for approval about landscaping and travel patterns. And there were some interesting things that came out in that. I said to him, what are you going to do about deliveries? And he said, well, the trucks will park on Janes Avenue. Sarah Raposa pointed out in the Board of Appeals decision, it says no parking, no deliveries made from Janes Avenue. They all have to be within the site. He wasn't aware of that. And so I said, well, it's tight turning there. If they go in one way, are they going to come in Main Street, go out Janes Avenue, or go in Janes Avenue, go out Main Street? So he's got to figure that one out too.
And that was a major problem when Wills was there.
Sure.
The Benjamin Moore truck comes to mind,
And-
unloading,
and-
big amounts of paint
yes.
in this semi-park there.
Yeah,
How's
and
that
also with
been
Master
working
Touch,
out?
it was a problem.
How's that been working out with Brothers Marketplace? Because they,
The chief said this, the particular problem he is most concerned about is there's a truck that parks in front of the Will's Hardware building in the middle of the day and makes deliveries. And that has been a problem because, you get cars that are trying to turn onto James Avenue and they have to go way out to get around it. So it's a bit of a problem. But, overall, that's the worst one. The other ones, I think, most of them, the trucks delivering on the south side are not so bad, but
Oh, good.
they're delivering on the north side, and they have to cross the street with,
Yeah. Are they keeping the big tractor trailers out of it pretty much so that we don't have those tying up the downtown?
sometimes, yeah, sometimes no. Sometimes, some of them come early in the morning. It's the ones, and he said that's not a problem. The ones that are a problem, the ones that come in the middle of the day,
Yeah.
they really can
Okay.
mess things up, so.
They, by the way, had their 1-year anniversary on Saturday.
I know, isn't it amazing? It
Hot
just
dogs,
seemed like they
hamburgers,
just
and free
opened,
drinks.
so,
It's
yeah.
great.
Just
Can't
happened
beat
upon
free
it.
food.
Yeah. I didn't even notice, they didn't have much publicity about it, did they?
And they had a dunk tank, and then they had a
They had a
pie
flyer,
eating.
every time you bought something there for the past couple of weeks, a flyer went with your purchase.
Oh, really? Huh. They d- No, we didn't get them.
Thursday night special.
I got one.
Did you? Okay, you're special, yeah.
Might have been trying to keep town hall away from the free food.
That's right, you already had enough free food, right? You didn't.
See, we're not always the first one to find out these things in town hall. Okay, if any of you are around Friday morning, 10 o'clock, the MBTA is going to have their engineers and some of their representatives out inspecting the railroad grade crossings in Medfield, starting at 10 o'clock at South Street,
Yeah.
and then working their way north
Yeah.
up to Hospital Road.
Sure.
I think we have 7 of them. They're doing, I think they did Framingham and Sherburne today, and
Okay.
they're doing Medfield, and I think some others in Sherburne Friday.
Good.
So 10 o'clock, South Street, rail crossing, if you can make
When,
it.
are you gonna be there, Christine? Are you meeting with him, or is Mike?
I'll be with them,
You
the
are?
I
chief
think
will
the
be
police chief
there,
is
it
going,
will
I
be,
talked to him
yeah.
today.
Yeah,
Just
well,
especially, I mean, yeah, I know you have a lot of concerns and issues which you're gonna raise with them.
Yes.
My other concern is just that condition of the 109 crossing.
Yeah, and I think there was some indication that we're gonna give that priority.
Mhm.
Yeah, That's
There,
according
so,
to Representative Dooley, they were going.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, yeah. Yeah, my concern is I want to know more about what is being proposed. I think it's going to be a major freight line, and then they're going to upgrade it to start bringing more freight through, which is already a problem, but, okay, the outreach offices, Andrew's been working with Don Alcott, and he also got some help from summer help from the highway department. They were down there painting the offices today at their outreach is moving, as you know, is moving into the former space of the Medfield TV. And there's some,
I just think that's so good and so overdue for the half of a closet that she's been jammed into, and what she does, I just think is
yes, yes.
tremendous, and
And-
if anybody deserves that space, she does, so that's
Yes.
great.
And I think it'll work out well once she gets in there and gets settled. Chris tells me she's hired another outreach worker that's been
great,
vacant
good.
for about a year, so she finally was able to get someone, and they're gonna be starting after Labor Day, so that's good timing because
She
we'll be
couldn't
moving in.
find people that had the right credentials, apparently. It was just,
Yeah, she thinks she finally
Long
found
haul.
one, so we'll see.
I mean, she works under the radar, but she does yeoman's work and just is so beneficial and helpful to so many people, and we don't know about it.
Right.
It doesn't get the publicity, but it's just such a needed position, and this, I think, is a great move.
You know, I think the jobs that fly under the radar are frequently the ones that are most effective. You know, something like that, like the home committee. I mean, half
Right.
people don't know
Right.
what the home,
Right.
there is a home committee, and yet it does such a great job, so.
it might make some sense at some point to think about having the youth outreach office head a youth committee in town. Because they really are dealing with the kids. They're sort of the primary people other than the schools that deal with the kids.
Yeah, it's such a, there's so many privacy issues involved that makes it difficult. I know she's had, what do they call them, peer counselors over the years,
Mhm.
where she interviews high school kids, and if a kid's having a problem, they can go to a peer counselor at the high school, and sometimes that works. Some of them work out fine, others it's not always the best. So I think she's got a pretty good handle on what she does there, and I think she's been with us now, what, 13 or 14 years? She came not too long after you, a couple of years after you, didn't she? So, okay, I don't know if I did email you on this. There was quite a commotion in town with helicopters flying all over. People maybe wonder what happened. There was a dog that fell into a abandoned well down on Elm Street, and apparently it was about 30 feet deep, and they had to get a Animal Rescue League special rescue team out or something, and they had
Norfolk County Tech.
Norfolk County, was that, well, whatever, they had to block Elm Street. There were so many cars and trucks and whatnot responded.
20-member team.
They had, I understand there were 3 helicopters flying over the site.
First I thought it was for a med flight. At one point there was 4 helicopters, but I guess they were all the news.
Yes, yeah.
The news
There
helicopters.
were.
Five, Fox,
Yes,
New England Cable News.
It was not the med flight, it was the news people.
Yes, yeah. So it got quite a bit of publicity, but I'm sure people that heard all these helicopters wondered what was going on. That was it, and I understand they did get the dog out alive, and
And the dog's okay, but I
Yeah.
understand.
I think so, yeah. Okay, we are, the Board of Appeals is getting a request for a brewery at the Potpourri,
Excellent.
and they will have to come to you people for a brewer's pouring license. Is that the correct
Wow.
terminology?
Yeah, it's a two-step process. This, I talked directly to the ABCC about this. They mean the ABCC, bowing to interests, have determined that although the statute requires for a farmer brewer's license that the farmer grow part of the ingredients, they've decided it's impractical, so they've waived that requirement entirely.
Right.
They will grant the brewer's license. So that's for basically the manufacturing aspect. If the brewer wants to do retail, then they must come for a pouring license to the local board. And it's not trumping on either level, it does not trump the local zoning and land use regulations. So that's basically what it is.
Perfect.
In my understanding from an email I got today, they currently have a brewer's license in Foxborough, and their intention is to transfer it to
Try to
Medfield.
transfer it to Medfield. Oh, interesting, yeah.
That's like I said, that's at the ABCC level. The ABCC has just kind of become very, very aggressive, for lack of a better term, in filling in the gaps. Like they've created something called a caterer's license to address
Sure.
an issue because the legislature has failed to act. In this case, the farmer brewer, the winery brewer, the legislation was well-intentioned but not fully thought out, and the ABCC's on the front line, and they're basically doing what they feel is needed to
Good.
make the thing effective.
Excellent.
Well, there we go. We have a distillery. We're going to have a brewery.
It's gonna be very
Maybe we
nice.
maybe we need a
Winery,
winery.
we'll be all set.
Maybe we could do that upstate hospital.
This would be good. Nice fields
Anything
up
else,
there.
No, that's it.
I just, let me just, before I turn over, here's the latest update on the double telephone poles. We have a meeting set up for September at some point.
Move.
We're trying.
Right now, we have, moves at glacier speed sometimes, but 85 of the poles have been removed, 18 are left. 6 are on Main Street, 6 are on Fairview. I'm particularly concerned, I'm putting pressure on the ones on Main Street because of the volume of traffic, and some of them have been there for a while. So we are making some progress, as slow as it may seem, but hopefully in September, when we meet, we'll get those 18 out of there.
I like how you shade out those ones that have been removed, like Christine did on the
Mark?
Yeah, I just quickly want to let you know, I've been working with Andrew on a contract for the vendor or the contractor on the solar installation at the water and sewer treatment plant. There were only 2 bids. We've been working with the low bidder, and unfortunately, they've taken a rather intransigent position on the terms of the contract. So we have a follow-up conversation with them tomorrow, but to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure where this is going to go. If they're not willing to show more flexibility than they've been willing to show up until now.
That's too bad.
I mean, we're talking things about warranties and
Oh, yeah.
that sort of thing that they're not willing to give on, so.
It was interesting, we were expecting more bids, and I read an article in the Wall Street Journal today about how this process is working. There were some problems out in Arizona, and it explained quite clearly in this article what happens is they like the ones that are not owned, that are leased,
Right.
because they get the federal tax credits. If you own them, in our case, we will get the tax credits on those, so they're much more inclined to bid on projects that are leased, because they make money on it,
Basically, they're
yeah.
just acting as a contractor here for a public works project, namely the installation of
Right.
solar panels, so.
Yeah, the other would make so much more money the other way, I'm sure.
So, and that, because I think we had something like 13 people take out specs and 7 or 8 show up for
Yeah,
preliminary meetings, and then we only got 2 bids, so,
yeah.
but I think that's why.
So when is your next meeting with them?
I had a phone conversation at Andrew's request last week with a rep plus their attorney, in-house attorney. We went through each of the half a dozen terms that they had come back with a totally mocked up copy of our contract. And I went through all the terms, I bent over backwards, I said, look, if you can do this, you can do that. Well, we'll go back and we'll revise based on this conversation, we understand what you're saying. And I was pretty optimistic that they were gonna, make some concessions. When the draft came back, it was virtually identical to what they'd done the first time, including the fact that they are completely disclaiming any warranties other than 1 year on the workmanship. And I want a warranty on the panels themselves, which they're getting from somewhere else. They said, well, that's unheard of. I said, no, it's not. If you need to get a warranty up the chain, that's your business, but you're the one getting these and procuring them and installing them, and if the panels themselves fail during some period of time, and I'm willing to talk about what that period of time is, but, we expect a warranty on that. So that was one big stumbling block right there, and then there was some others. They wanted a chunk of money up front. I said, that's not the way municipalities work. You've got to
Yeah.
commit to having bought materials or done work, and then you get paid. And then there's a number of other terms similarly, so we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, I hope
At
you-
some point, you have to say, this is not in the town's best interest, so.
Mark, if you get to that point, can you then switch to the second bidder?
You can. The second bidder, I think, was significantly more expensive. I don't know. So I think at that point, you have to make a decision whether you want to do that. The problem was, Andrew was relying on the consultant to get us through this process. The consultant never consulted with me, which is not unique to consultants, engineers and all. And there was not a typical sample contract attached to the RFP. I don't usually have this problem, for instance, in Franklin, where we do this stuff all the time, because it says that the successful bidder will be expected to sign the town's standard contract in substantially the form attached here to is Exhibit A. So it's not even open to discussion. Here's the contract, here are the terms.
Right.
You want the work, you sign the contract. Maybe I'll tweak it a little bit here or there, but we're not gonna rewrite the thing. But that didn't happen here, so that gave them the out right off the bat when the contract was submitted to them after the fact. Well, this is a negotiable item, so we'll just have to see where it goes.
That's too bad. Okay, any other business? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, everybody.
Dinner.